Hey guys, and welcome to Should You Buy It, where all we do is talk a little bit about the game and whether or not we think it's worth the cost.
Enemies are preparing to breach one of our gates. They've broken through a gate.
In this episode, we'll be playing Orcs Must Die 3, the third-person strategy tower defense game where you and up to one additional friend will have to fight off the never-ending swarms of orcs trying to make their way into the rift.
The first question that we always cover on these videos is what stage of development is the game in? And in this case, Orcs Must Die 3 is currently in full release and available on PC as well as most consoles for $30.
So what exactly is Orcs Must Die 3? Well, in this game, you will have to survive waves of evil armies who are seeking to enter the rift. If too many make it into the rift, then you will lose the level. That all being said though, there are many tools at your side to help you keep these orcs at bay.
Being that Orcs Must Die 3 is essentially a tower defense game, your job is going to be to place traps that will help thin out as many waves as possible. In total, there are 3 different types of traps at your disposal. The first is your floor traps, which will obviously go on the floor. The second is the wall traps, which will obviously go on walls, and then finally you have ceiling traps, which obviously go on ceilings. The great thing about all of this though is that there are many different types of traps to choose from. You have anything from a freeze trap to traps that will simply chuck orcs off into the abyss.
Now each trap falls into a certain category beyond where they are placed. The main categories are damage, crowd control, and displacement or instant kill traps. For instance, a butterfly window trap would fall into the crowd control category, as well as snow cannons, which slows your foes. The next category would be damage traps, which will cause as much damage as possible, such as brimstone, acid, ballistas, and more. Then finally you have your displace and insta-kill traps, which are freaking amazing to watch in action, as they usually take down your foes in absolutely hilarious ways. Just to give you an idea here, the fling trap will send your enemies flying into the abyss or make them start the path all over again. To clarify, there are also barricades which would displace your enemies to go in a certain direction.
Now after all that, they even go a step further in allowing you to upgrade your traps as well as your trinkets and weapons. Trinkets and weapons are essentially your additional tools that will help you clear waves of orcs alongside your traps. These vary quite widely just to make things more fun. Some examples here are the crossbow, which has a rapid fire mode as well as a stun arrow that will consume your mana, and a lightning staff that has a chain lightning effect. There are a lot of weapons to choose from, but they all vary drastically in what they actually do. Now as far as trinkets go, these are what I would call add-ons. You see, sometimes your weapons and traps won't be enough to fend off the hordes of orcs, so that's where your trinkets come in to make up the slack. These can do all sorts of things, from spawning lightning storms to resetting all your traps instantaneously. However, the exchange for bringing these is that when doing so, you will have to limit the variety of traps that you have available to you on the battlefield.
With all that being said, the game takes one final step in adding all the previous characters for you to play as. Each one has a unique ability which will also change the way you might play them. For example, the original character has a double jump, while one of the newer ones has a blink or a teleport ability. The catch is, in order to play as whoever you want though, you'll have to first beat the base campaign. The campaign in Orcs Must Die 3 isn't much better than what we've seen in the previous games. Sadly, it's essentially just, hey, there's a bad dude over there and we should just go stop him kind of thing. It's certainly a nice addition to the game, but it isn't anything to write home about either. That being said, it definitely knows that not many people care about the storyline, and thus doesn't take itself too seriously at the same time either.
Finally, before moving on, we need to talk about the different playable modes within the game. In total, there are 5. You have the first campaign, the second campaign, scramble mode, endless mode, and weekly challenges. The first 2 campaigns are quite straightforward and don't require much explanation, as it is simply a campaign you will have to play through in order to unlock the other modes. Scramble mode, however, is my favorite new addition to the franchise. Scramble mode is basically a roguelike version of the game in which you will have to play a series of 5 maps with random debuffs and buffs that you will have to choose from in order to make it harder. After losing all 100 lives throughout the series of maps, you will fail and start again. The endless mode was also quite interesting, as you can choose which map you want to play on, and each map will have different traps that do well on it. Then finally, we have weekly challenges, which are maps that will have preset loadouts and waves for you to try. The goal here is to get the highest possible score and be at the top of the leaderboards on a global level.
So now let's move into the pros and cons section for the video. First up for the pros is that co-op in a tower defense game is not something that you see every day and makes the game just that much more enjoyable. Another pro is that the quality of gameplay is extremely high, especially your first time through each mode. It's quite fun to see how each trap fares in certain maps and experiencing the harder monsters for the first time. Next up is that the game provides the player with a variety of ways to deal with the difficulties that you're going to face. There are 6 playable characters, 40 plus traps, as well as tons of different weapons and trinkets to choose from that will change the way you play each round. After that is that the war scenarios provide a different way to experience the game on a larger scale. There are war scenario specific traps, and it just gives you a sense of feeling that you're defending the walls at Helm's Deep. And finally for the pros is that this game has a good sense of replayability with 3 modes that keep the player coming back for more. For example, the weekly challenges present the player with a way to improve their ranking against players from around the world.
Now for the cons. First up for the cons is that although the game has replayability value, it does get stale and repetitive rather quickly. After all, there are only so many ways that you can kill orcs. Another con is that unfortunately it is very easy to optimize the fun out of the game. Once you know the best builds for each map, there is little fun in trying to do them a second time. Just to give you an example, 80% of the traps feel significantly underpowered, especially since all traps have the same reset timer. Finally, for the cons is that the AI in this game felt worse than the AI in Orcs Must Die 1 and 2. In the previous games, they would attempt to break barricades when you completely blocked off a path, but in this one, it just forces them all into a single choke point, making many maps feel way too easy.
So now that brings us to the rating for the game, and when we rate games, we want to get 1 hour of enjoyment out of every $1 that we spend on the game. So for this game in particular, in Orcs Must Die 3, we would want to get 30 hours of enjoyment out of the $30 that we spent. And after putting 24 played hours into this game, we give it 7 out of 10 potatoes.
Yeah, as someone who played Orcs Must Die 1, 2, and 3, I definitely think that 3 is a really good game and I had a ton of fun playing it. That being said, I also feel like the devs took 1 step forward and 2 steps back on many of the game's mechanics, such as the AI and graphics for an example. The good news is that the gameplay quality is still extremely high, as it always has been in this franchise, and it's a game that you can come back to at any time and have a few hours of fun. Overall though, I feel it is a great game to add to your collection and therefore is probably worth the cost.
You won already? Boom! Totally should.
Before you guys go, don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe, as we recently noticed that over 98% of our viewers are not subscribed to our channel. We put out multiple new videos every single week, and your support is what makes this all possible. If you would like to support us even further and get some cool benefits, check out our membership program, which can be found in the join button below. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time.